He thought he'd come back a hero. The war decided otherwise. The psychology of the American soldier before America ever entered the war. Concepts: normalcy, bias, de-individuation. On December 7th, 1941, James Crawford was 21 years old. He worked at a gas station in Columbus, Ohio. He loved baseball, Western movies, and his mother made the best apple pie in the neighborhood. He had a girl he liked, a Sunday routine, and a life that felt permanent in the way only young lives do. 3 years later, James wasn't sleeping anymore. Not really. He stared at the ceiling every night, hands gripping his sheets, waiting for a sound that never came. Not a gunshot, not an explosion, just a sound. Any sound that would confirm the world around him was still real. Series arc over 8 episodes, we are going to follow the American soldier from the moment he enlists to the moment he tries, and often fails, to come home. Not the physical journey, the psychological one. What the military builds inside a man's mind, what combat breaks, and what is left standing when the noise finally stops. This is the full story, from the normalcy of 1939 to the silence of 1945. America before the war. To understand what happens to James, you first need to understand America in 1939. Europe is on fire. Hitler has just invaded Poland. France is about to fall. And America is watching. One word sums up the American mindset at the time: isolationism. James doesn't read the international pages. He follows the Cleveland Indians. He's saving up to buy a car. The war in Europe feels as distant as the moon, something you can see if you look up, but nothing that touches your daily life. Psychologists have a name for this detachment from the outside world: the normalcy bias. Our brain's tendency to assume that tomorrow will look like today, that chaos happens to other people, in other countries, to people who are somehow less fortunate or less protected than us. James had that bias. Almost every American soldier did. And that bias is precisely what makes what follows so devastating. Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941, 7:48 a.m., Hawaii time. The first Japanese planes appear over Pearl Harbor. 2,403 Americans dead in under 2 hours. America enters the war. But here's what the history books don't tell you. It wasn't fear that most young men felt that day. It was excitement. Post-war studies on veterans showed that the dominant emotional response among 1941 recruits wasn't terror. It was adrenaline, a sense of duty, and a genuine desire to be part of something bigger. The propaganda had done its job. So had the Westerns. The hero always wins. Good always defeats evil. The enemy is always faceless, and the cause is always clean. No one ever shows you the 2 years that follow, when he tries to fall asleep without flinching. James enlists, voluntarily, and that's where the real story begins. Training, destroy to rebuild. In civilian life, James was someone. The army dismantles all of that, methodically. This process is called de-individuation. Erase the personal identity, the clothes, the haircut, the daily habits, and build a collective one in its place. The unit, the regiment, the mission. But there is one detail that captures this better than any shouted order ever could. On the first day at Fort Benning, before James unpacks a single thing, a sergeant walks down the line and collects every man's watch. No explanation given. From this moment forward, you do not decide when to wake up, when to eat, when to rest. Time is no longer yours. That small object, a watch a father might have given, a graduation gift, a birthday present, represented a life where you were the one who decided how to spend your hours. The army takes it without ceremony because that is precisely the point. You don't sleep when you want. You don't eat when you are hungry. You move when you're told, stop when you're told. And eventually, you stop asking why. 8 weeks in, James isn't thinking about the Cleveland Indians anymore. He's thinking about his platoon, about not letting them down, exactly what the army wanted. But this new soldier isn't psychologically equipped for what he's about to see. First contact. According to S.L., a Marshall's 1947 study, still debated by historians, but never fully disproven, only 15 to 20% of American soldiers actually fired at the enemy during their first engagement. Not because they were cowards, because the human brain has an innate resistance to taking another person's life, a resistance wired into us by millions of years of evolution. The instinct to survive does not automatically override the instinct not to destroy. Those two things live side by side in the same mind, and in that first moment of contact, they go to war with each other. James discovers this in Europe, late 1943. He sees a silhouette between the trees. 50 meters, maybe 60. His training tells him what to do. His hands already know the motion. They have done it 1,000 times in 8 months of drills. He raises his weapon, and he freezes. Here is what no training manual ever prepared him for. His heart rate spikes to over 175 beats per minute. Combat physiologists would later call this condition Tacipia, time distortion under extreme stress. For James, those next few seconds stretch into something that feels closer to minutes. He can hear his own breathing. He can feel the cold of the metal through his gloves. His vision narrows, a phenomenon called tunnel vision, where everything at the periphery disappears and the silhouette in front of him becomes the only thing that exists in the world. But his finger does not move, because somewhere underneath the uniform, underneath the 8 weeks of Fort Benning, underneath the de-individuation and the watch that was taken and the identity that was rebuilt, James Crawford from Columbus, Ohio is still there. And James Crawford from Columbus, Ohio has never hurt anyone in his life. The brain, in this moment, does something extraordinary. It searches for an exit. It questions whether the silhouette is truly a threat. It wonders if perhaps the situation will resolve itself. Psychologists call this mechanism last resort inhibition, the mind's final attempt to avoid the irreversible. It is not cowardice. It is biology. It is the same mechanism that stops most people from jumping from a height, even when they know they are wearing a safety harness. The silhouette moves. The moment passes. James. What happens in the seconds after is just as important as the freeze itself. James does not feel relief. He does not feel victorious. He feels a strange, hollow stillness, as if the sound of the shot created a vacuum inside him that nothing immediately rushes in to fill. Some veterans describe this in post-war interviews as feeling like they had broken something inside themselves that they didn't know was there until it was gone. Not guilt, not pride, just absence. This is the moment where the man and the soldier collide. And this is the moment the mind begins to adapt, because it has no other choice. Adaptation and conclusion. James doesn't stay frozen forever, but the thawing has a price. To function in combat, the mind learns to shut certain doors, quietly, without asking permission. It happens gradually, almost imperceptibly, until one day James realizes he feels nothing where he used to feel everything. The mechanism that carries him through is loyalty transfer. He is no longer fighting for America, not for democracy, not for the clean causes on the propaganda posters back home. He's fighting for Eddie, who snores too loud and somehow makes it funny. For Mickey, who keeps a photo of his daughter in his chest pocket and takes it out every night before he sleeps, just to look at it for a second. For not being the one who lets them down when it counts. This is what combat soldiers across every war in history have reported, that ideology fades fast under fire, and what remains, what actually keeps a man moving forward, is the face of the person next to him. The unit becomes the only country that matters. The soldier survives, but what that costs the man is a debt that doesn't come due until the war is over, until the noise stops, until James Crawford is back in Columbus, Ohio, staring at a ceiling that is perfectly safe, in a house where nobody is going to die, and he still cannot sleep. That debt is what this series is about. Next episode, 3 seconds. That's all your brain has to decide to live